All right, Jim Walmsley, great to have you back on the Singletrack Podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Yeah, looking forward to connecting and catching up.
Did you get a chance to watch Havalina this past weekend? And if so, what were your thoughts? What were your takeaways? What stuck with you?
I followed it a little bit, checked in. It's kind of a weird time watching it in Europe. I think I was sleeping most of it. But yeah, Fast Times, I guess, is the first takeaway. And then Will Murray with kind of a second big hit of a run, but the top three guys kind of smashing the time, and it's not just one guy, not just two guys, like three. I think it's kind of indicative of more aggressive racing and potentially like a really nice day. But then also I saw lots of ice kiddie pools. So I think the way Jamil and Aravaipa kind of run their race and run Javelina and how they do it and how they kind of run it as like, let's get people Western States qualifiers is like probably the biggest pull for that race for people to do it a lot of times. And he truly has like a big, massive team behind the scenes to pull in an enormous amount of ice that like is not normal. So even sunny, warm October, lots of people are running fairly fast in warmer temperatures because the amount of ice doesn't exist in any other part of the world, pretty much.
When you look at Will's time, 12:10, does that seem at this point like a respectable time for that course? Like if you were to ever go and do that race, would prior to this year, would that have been like the type
Yeah,
of time you were
what's
gunning for
that
in the sport?
breakdown to pace, I guess? Do you
Gosh,
have
low
that
sevens,
offhand?
I think. I have to pull it up on
Yeah,
Strava, but I think low sevens. Let's see.
well, 7.2 to do 12 hours.
I got it. I got it right here. 1 second. 7:17.
Seven. And what's the gap on that is the other thing you kind of got to start to look at.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
pretty flat, but it's not perfectly flat, as everybody kind of there will tell you.
Gap is
Um,
7:01.
yeah, so then if you compare the gap to world record 100-mile pace, like 6:35, then there's still 20 seconds per mile to kind of buffer with to go faster. So you're looking at sub 7 minute pace potentially if you put up something comparable to what Alexander Sorensen has done in flat track 100-mile stuff. Like if you truly want to rip it and you're truly hitting consistent paces. But I mean, they're not doing washing machine style there anymore, are they? Like they in the past they used to do washing machine style, and I think it's all a circular direction. So you do every single loop the same, and like on the exact same trails, I've also ran basically like a 248, 250, 50K before the trials, and kind of that was the beginning of the overtraining where I didn't really come back, I would say, before the trials. But it happened on the Pemberton Trail is the majority of that loop. I think what they've run for Javelina, the extra section is maybe a little hillier than the rest of the section, but I mean hills. It's kind of hard to call them hills at 7 minute pace, but yeah, it's not flat. You can say that.
I didn't realize you were overtrained going into the marathon trials a few years back.
I would call it because like when things got hard in the marathon, I would say I got popped off the like front group a little bit, and it was super windy, and that's a hilly marathon. And I just know reflecting back on it, I didn't have like the fight to latch back on, and I was dangling off the back for another 3 miles. And I'm like, I need to close the gap. Like my life, quote unquote, relies on closing this gap. And I just didn't have the same fight I have normally. Like I should have been able to get back on and then get pulled for more and more distance. But yeah, I mean the trials, like essentially I'm flirting with marathoners outside of my league, and yeah, I got pulled out as good as I could and whatever. Then you're kind of on your own, and you just need to wrap up the day at that point once you're popped off the back of the front of the pack at the trials, because technically, like, yeah, the fight's not the same to be in the group and then not be in the group and you're just off the back. Like, technically, the point of the race is to compete for top three spots. And I mean, if you're in the group, there's some small hope, but I mean, as you see, I guess in this case, maybe 15 to 20 guys like pull away. You're like, well, I wasn't even close. So there's not as much fight.
This reminds me, let me ask you this question. So, well, actually, first, who has the harder transition? You going to trail, you a high caliber trail athlete going to the marathon, or a high caliber marathoner coming into trail, and why?
Depends on mentality and perspective a little bit, but I would say for the most part, the transition from marathoner to trail should go better than trailer to marathon. I think, and especially a high level marathon, like something really interesting. I don't know if you caught the story of this guy, Jimmy Wellen, Australian cyclist, just ran the Valencia half marathon. Did you see that at all?
I did.
Yeah, so former pro cyclist for 3 or 6 years or so in the, I think just below the World Tour. So, what do they call it? But nonetheless, it's still professional cycling. He was for like Q 36.5 and he just ran 61:30 for half. It's really respectable, high level half marathon. And he was just behind, uh, I think, Alex Yee from the UK, who just ran like 101:20 something in the half. Same race, but he's the gold medalist in the Olympic triathlon. And then Jimmy Wellens, a former pro cyclist that transitioned to go to triathlon, but he's chosen to do, I think, Olympic distance triathlon would be my guess. But yeah, so that's like a really unusual change. I would consider that going trail to running sort of thing, but still 61:00 is not competing with 56:30 at the front with Jacob Kiplimo. Like, yeah, it's still hard to kind of say you're truly competing at the front. 61 to 62 has kind of become the standard. I think I'm surprised the US trials has actually kept the
Me
qualifying
too.
time just at 63. I think it should be 62:00. But yeah, I don't know. I would say marathoners have the engines. They have a lot of skills that are useful, but then kind of they would follow a lot of like what I would say my trajectory of coming in the race and just all these dead ends, traps, and ways that as a big engine you can get yourself into trouble in trail running because the race just isn't like short enough to manhandle it that way. Like you just can't power your way through it because you're fit enough to run 100 miles. Like okay, on a track or something, maybe it's becoming that way because you have this efficiency, but throw in some really steep hills even, they're going to punch you into just walking up it. And how do you deal with walking? And now you're walking for say it's a 2 mile hill at 15% and it's mile 80 in a race, like that's pretty interesting for someone to be able to handle it. And okay, do you have experience with like getting broken down to a walk that late in a race? And if you do, like, can you regain it like your stride again after mile 80? Like a lot of that foresight I didn't have when I was coming in. When I remember Lake Sonoma 50 mile. First time I ran it was 2015, and I remember like mile 42, mile 43, I was hitting hills and I was walking. I'm like, ah, I suck so bad. Like I'm broken. I can't run it anymore. This is crazy. But then with experience and like I went back in 2016, I think 2015, eventually like I think I even passed someone ahead of me and I saw other runners, not gonna throw people under the bus per se, but other like professional high level guys that are famous. In 2015, I was not famous on the scene at this point, but like guys that had made it, contracts, and they were walking going backwards or walking and they managed to hold on a place behind me, a place in front of me sort of thing. And there's a little bit of a perspective of like, oh, I'm not unique in the fact that I'm blowing like my muscles are blown up and that I'm having this issue. The reality is like pretty much everybody's kind of going through it, and how you handle it and take it in stride, and then like once that hill is over you regroup and just get back on with it. um that was a really good takeaway in the fact that like when I ran that same 2015, no, I guess 2016 would have been my first run at Bandera, and just starting to like the brokenness of ultra running, like you get broken down, part of that being normal, and that everyone from the front of the race to the back of the race goes through it. Or I always like telling one of my original stories of my third JFK, because I say it's the third time I like really tried to race it and run a fast time. So I ran JFK in 2014, 15, 16, and yeah, I don't think I'll ever. I don't have plans to go back. I won't say never, but
You can never say never.
um, yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was a discovery race for me that I kept going back to. But the third time in 2000, yeah, I think it was 16. I tried to put like oomph behind it, but mile 38, I also first started I think in the original Tracer shoe, just lightweight foam shoe. Ran the whole Appalachian Trail on that, ran the marathon sections. And mile 38, I'm bonking and my calves are completely cramping up. And I remember sitting down, drinking a whole 20-ounce bottle of Coca-Cola, changing my shoes into the Challenger 2s and just going, I'm so broken. I just need to get this race over with and finish and find the finish line. Don't let anyone catch me. And I ended up switching my shoes. My calves loosened up a bit again. I ended up finishing okay. I got back some pace. I think I finished like I was running maybe 5:45 pace. Then I stopped for over 3 minutes. And then I continued and I managed to continue at 6:30 pace. But there's this awkward like 3 minute gap of no one really knew about it. They just took the average time of all of it, but they didn't realize how fast I was running. Then just utter explosion stop and then continued. And then so I ended up holding on for 5:21, which was 13 minutes faster than Max King's time of 5:34. And so everybody was like, "Whoa, this is crazy!" And that year, with Ultra Running Magazine, it won performance of the year. But then for me, I'm like laughing behind it of like nobody knows the story behind it of like I was completely broken and the reality that people think that that's like the performance of the year and ooh and ah, but in reality, I knew I was broken during it and just like yeah, the reality of ultra running is it gets ugly for everybody, I guess.
I want to come back in just a second to the marathon versus trail debate because I think I have a good hypothetical for you. But you mentioned the 2015 Lake Sonoma, and actually, I had a few questions about your 2015 season that are kind of random. But you won JFK that year. I think that was your second JFK win. But in the lead up to
Yeah,
that, it was kind of bonkers. You did this Gobi 50K race, and then
yeah,
this the 100K World Champs in the Netherlands. Like, how did you piece together those three races in like a two and
yeah.
a half month span? Like, how'd you get to Gobi?
So I don't even know when Gobi was.
It was mid
And,
October.
and then I think
And you got
okay,
third.
so
You didn't even win. You got third.
yeah, I got smoked by two random Kenyan guys, marathoner guys that showed up and they're passing a water bottle back and forth. And I just discovered a running vest and I'm like, oh, they're not drinking or eating anything. I'm gonna catch them eventually. Like they're gonna get tired. And then they just kept jogging away. And I'm just like, I'm actually the one breaking. But it was a bunch of sand. It was super random. I think I left flags. So 2015 is kind of the crazy year in my life because I got officially like kicked out of the Air Force at that time, moved back in with my
Yeah.
parents for a few months, found a apartment of Futsum Zebrhalewski to sublease. I think I butchered his last name. Sorry, Futsum. But I subleased his room while he was still in college for like summer. And so it was an apartment with a bunch of NAU kids essentially. And I started working at a bike shop in Flagstaff. And but essentially I started to live in a place consistently and kind of start my life consistently again in like May in 2015, or maybe I hadn't started working till July because I think before the job started, I was able to go out to Western States and see Western States for the first time, see Hard Rock for the first time as just kind of a dirtbag, so someone with nothing to do, just like bills are gonna start coming in, so eventually I need to go back and start working. And yeah, so like it was just a huge transition year, but one of the ideas with getting into ultra running was that I wanted to take up the opportunity to get like paid for travel. Like, so I never thought in 2015 that you could get paid enough for trail running to not work essentially, like not work a different job. I for sure I thought trail running like you're working a part-time job and you get to do this on the side and it's just gonna float bills while you get to do what you love and just a hobby. And then like now fast forward to our sport now, it's just insane. There's so much more growth and opportunity at this point, and it's I think we're truly in the professionalization of the sport and how that changes different edges of the sport. But I think the sport's multifaceted and can balance more than just one aspect. But so 2015, essentially, I think because of my JFK, I got invited to the World 100K Road Championships in the Netherlands. I think I got hurt, so that was my first race back. But I
28th,
like,
28th place.
yeah. So, but I went through 50K in 3:03, and the world
I
record
remember.
at that time was closer to maybe 6:18, something like that. And I went through in 3:03, and I guess like people were freaking out of like, who is this? This is not right. And like, I guess my parents actually went out there and they were like, other teams were coming over to look at my bottles and like, what's in his bottles? Like, he's got to be like, this is insane. Because I think I looked great. But the other thing too is I traveled to like, this is my first time racing abroad ever. Like, no, nothing. Don't have a training plan or anything. I had some injuries, so I didn't know how the shape was coming in, but I started running. I'm like, oh, well, this feels good. So let's just try to keep it sustainable. But I remember going to the Netherlands and going like, I didn't bring any nutrition. I'll just buy some at the store. It'll be fine. Like they should have goo. They should have what at the time Power Bar, like anything that I would recognize as an American kid. And I go in, I'm just like, I don't know what I don't know anything here. I don't have any plan. 2015, I don't think I'd made a nutrition plan for a race. So yeah, I think I kind of sipped on some like shaken up Coke that the coaches said would be good. And I remember most bottles absolutely just popped and exploded in my face with Coca-Cola, and I was covered in sugary Coca-Cola most of that race. And then mile 75, I remember lying down on the ground just going like, I've never hurt more in my life. 70K, 75K or 70K, 75K. And I lie down and then Camille Herron passed me in that race. And then I think I got up and I passed her back and maybe beat her by a few minutes. So she was out on that trip, and yeah, it was like kind of just a wild time of trying to learn races. And then Gobi Desert, I think I left Flagstaff and came back to Flagstaff within 5 days. And then they also like because they paid for my flight and paid for accommodations, but my memory of this is like I was not in a tube of some sort for maybe 10 hours, and the rest of it I was just traveling because I they flew me through Detroit, so it ended up being like maybe a super long flight to China, then a bullet train for like I think two different trains of 5 hours to get out to the middle of the Gobi Desert, and then like maybe arrived in the night, slept, woke up, did a race. Like Ford put on the race, and I didn't even know Ford existed in China at the time. Like I just my whole concept of the world, I hadn't traveled much at all, and like just didn't know what I didn't know at the time, and didn't think about things as much, and was just kind of open-minded to discovering new opportunities. But I guess as I've gotten more opportunities, now I'm more selective of like, oh, I've been here before. This sounds like a terrible trap, and like really cool opportunity, but it's just not the way I want to do it. And yeah, being trapped on a plane and a train and then just shipped straight back is just not my favorite thought of a way of doing a vacation. Not what I thought I would do if I got the opportunity to go to China.
As a fan, it's my opinion is you should at least make room for one equivalent of the Mesquite Canyon 50K every year. There should be one cool little off the beaten path race that you hop into.
Yeah. Yeah, Mesquite Canyon was fun. I think that was a little bit of a revengeance tour from 2016 because I remember I was absolutely like hammering Mesquite Canyon, and there's a T junction, and I still to this day swear the arrow said turn right for the 50K, but it's like you go through this junction two times, and I just read it maybe that like nonetheless I turned completely like opposite 180 direction and ran down, and I had read about Ford Canyon in the race, which has this big like granite white slick rock area that's very distinguishable. But I mean, it's a solid like 3.5, 4 miles in the wrong direction. And then I just booked it the other way. I still won that race somehow, but not like for the effort I put into that. I really didn't feel like I had anything to show for it in 2016. And then I think also I had a Sunto Ambit 3 at the time, and it totally crashed my data, so I didn't get to upload it. And I was really bummed. Like I don't have any climbs, anything from that. Yeah, it was a little green one that yeah, I wore that most of 2016. but yeah, it crashed, and I don't even have the data from the first one because I swear I absolutely clobbered some of that stuff, and it just counted for just what felt like nothing. So then this year I wanted to use it as a training run to get like kind of just a bib on before doing Chianti, and then all of a sudden, like I think the day before, I found out maybe Eric LaPuma's racing. I'm like,
Hmm.
ah, man, well, it's not going to be a walkthrough. It'll be so. Then I get like kind of prepared to race, and then I'm like trying to stay back with Eric, and I think we ran our first 10 miles together, and then I'm like, I feel good. I think I'm just gonna go, and like it'll be fine. I'm not gonna push too hard, and then kind of squeezed it a bit. But might have ended up putting a little bit of t too much oomph into it, looking at the gap by the finish line, because we ran a third of the race together, but ended up over 20 minutes apart, I think, by the end of it.
So coming back quick to the marathoner versus ultra runner debate, I'm going to give you a hypothetical because I kind of want to see
Okay.
how you react to this when someone in the media discusses it. Let's just say that we learn tomorrow that Joe Klecker is going to spend
Hmm.
all of 2026 building towards OCC. He's going to hop in like the Desert Rats 50K and he's going to try to grab a podium spot there, auto into OCC. Does someone like you who has spent their last 10 years dedicated to this sport, is there a chip on your shoulder you get if like someone in the media like me gives someone like Joe, call it
Well,
too
it'll
much
probably
attention or too
happen
much?
with Des Linden soon. I mean, she seems on the brink of getting into ultra, but at the same time, like Joe and Des are in very different phases of their careers, and I thought Des was supposed
But
to run Javelina, but
yeah, but the question I think for you is it disrespectful to give them too much credit as they are rookies just because of their talent in a different discipline?
I mean, I think it would be American focus and you and people that are more in tune with American track because Europeans wouldn't be interested in Joe Klecker at all coming to OCC, I would say. Like, I would say he's won national championships, but he wouldn't be on like the French radar outside of some track. Like, it's not like he's well known within Diamond League or something. Like, he's getting a Diamond League start bib. So it's not a big name, whether like say Jacob Kiplimo came to OCC, I mean, he would deserve, or Eliud Kipchoge comes, like they deserve every little bit of credit. And it's one of those things, whether it's Joe or Eliud Kipchoge coming, like that attention still goes into rising the whole sport. And so I think as a sport, we need to be receptive of it and not like confrontational or offended by it. I think it's fine. I think OCC is still it's a nice entry list, like entry spot. I think if I'm coming like if I was coming from bigger shoes than what I did, if I was in Joe, like Joe's accomplished so much more than I ever did in track, college, professionally, times, everything. But I accomplished, or I didn't even come close to what he's done in his running career in equivalent events. And I still came in with the ambition that like I want to win UTMB, like OCC, CCC. Why am I stopping there? Like, but then the thing is, if Joe goes straight into UTMB, how do you think that's going to play out? That's a
I mean,
question to
probably,
you.
yeah, yeah, honestly,
Be,
not
be,
well. I think there's too many
yes,
it's a
exactly.
different sport. There's too many variables.
It's gonna get like it's not gonna complete. Hey, here's actually another example, which has Joe's opening up in New York this week. I think
Yeah.
for the marathon.
That's why I bring
But
him up. He's top of mind for me.
so Duncan Pere, and let me check his last name. Do you know Duncan from Hoka?
No.
Okay, he's a French guy, but he's ran 209 for the marathon. He's gone to Hoka camp. I think actually the year I won, 2023. He was at Hoka camp prepping, and he's a 209 guy. He got in, he raced into UTMB, and he's like, "I yeah, I'm gonna race UTMB." And I'm just like, "Really?" And then he just wants to
Wait, was he
rush, rush,
leading the
rush.
race? Was he
Yeah, yeah,
leading like
yeah,
the
yeah,
first 10K? Yes. Okay. I
yeah.
remember that.
He was winning the first 10K, but I think by 20 miles he wasn't in the front anymore. And it was just like, Duncan's done. Like, what happened to Duncan? And I hope he gives it another try. I think he's really like curious about it, but also like there's a struggle with slowing down enough to make it to the finish. Like it's a true struggle with fast people in ultra running. Like you can't run 6 minute pace on the course for UTMB. And then like what happens when you're alone by yourself for 6 hours in the middle of the night for the first time ever and you've never used a headlight or your headlight goes off? Like, and you forgot to bring a proper spare one because you tried to run your headlight too strong. Like there's certain like little variables that can easily break it. But you know, like another example, because with Will Murray having success and him coming out of like seemingly nowhere sort of thing this year, I mean, he's on everybody's radar, I think, after pulling off second place at Black Canyon earlier this year. But so I think like everybody's pretty happy to see him pop up again this year. But I was like, well, how's he pulling this off? Like he seems like he has his stuff dialed. Like he's not coming in blind. So that's one really interesting thing too, is if someone like Joe comes in with the proper resources and the proper people and mentors, and a lot of times like say I would look at like at least when I was coming over to UTMB in the 2017. I was racing Francois Dain and Killian and Xavier. Yeah, so we'll leave it with that, even though the race was really big and had even more winners than that during the race. But I look at the like kind of mentors around me and people around me and people helping to prepare me for it. And I would say I didn't have a team of any sort like that to be prepared. It was mostly me going out, testing my own stuff and trying it. And I would say as Americans, we don't have like the structure and framework to set Americans up to transition successfully to
Huh.
European racing. And a lot of it will end up like you'll do it on your own. You don't have the budget starting out as an athlete. You don't have, maybe things are changing with brands supporting athletes more than 10 years ago, but 10 years ago, like there wasn't the same support and things are more on a dime and on a budget. And yeah, it's a lot harder to take public transportation all the way to Sears and now, and then show up and you have to do all the like say the team meals together, and then you're American, so you have your own specific diet because all Americans have a specific diet. I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat meat. That makes me a weirdo in a lot of parts of Europe. Like it makes eating harder in different places, and having a bit more support and budget makes those or brands putting things behind makes you not have to worry about the logistics and being taken care of as much. And all of a sudden, like you can worry a lot more about performing. But for Americans to come race at OCC, race at UTMB for the first time, um, yeah, I would say at the moment it's kind of just good luck. You kind of got to get thrown into the deep end of the pool a few times. I would say in Europe, and like part of me just going like, well, screw getting my ass kicked like this, and the fight's not fair, and yeah, so I'm gonna come over here and I'll learn how to survive over here on my own, and essentially like, oh, guess who's on this side of the pond now, and like, yeah, I kind of like looking at it that way of making myself comfortable and figuring things out, and then just yeah, I mean, I love it over here too. I love like I love how hard the nuances are as well. Like I enjoy it, but yeah, there's a lot of what ifs if Joe came into the sport and tried to attack it. I would say it's difficult, and then for him to come into OCC would be a very mature approach to trying out the UTMB series because it would play to some of his strengths, but you also have to run the descents a lot faster. So what happens when Christian Miagino or is chasing you down on the final descent? Like, yeah, you got a big problem if you can't run downhill much faster.
So you're talking about all the infrastructure you need right now. Are you saying that if we went back 5 or 6 years in time when you had that awesome tent city build out in the middle of the San Juans, was that the wrong strategic, like setting aside the training, was basing there and
No,
creating that lifestyle, was that the wrong decision for winning UTMB?
I think it's I mean I still went to the San Juans last year. I don't I love the San Juans enough to make that mistake, I guess. I love the time around Hard Rock and the people out there doing it. That to me it's worth it more than the race, and I like that experience. And so there's that. But do I think it's the best professional move to set up a tent and live at 3,000 meters, 10,000 feet, freeze your ass off in the morning and like run most of the day and then eat some crappy meal at camp and if I have to cook it myself, maybe if I'm lucky, just cook me a nice meal. But like, no, I'm not recovering. And then most years I'm trying to throw that in between recovering from trying to race at Western States and then rebound for UTMB. Like, I think the way Katie Scheid did it is perhaps the best strategy of she raced Western States and then like the next day she was on a plane back to France and not at 3,000 meters camping. Like if I were to try Western States UTMB double again, like yeah, like I'm tired of wasting my time at UTMB showing up hoping that my energy will be good enough to beat the best guys in the world at a 100-mile mountain race during the night. Like it's proven or it's shown to me 3 out of 3 times like I struggle with my energy given like Western States, San Juan's at 3,000 meters, uh, UTMB. It's not been a good recipe for me, but I'm like ignorant, hard-headed enough and stupid enough to still go, well, if I did Western States and then I just went straight to France and I only lived at 1,000 meters and I started out slowly and I just started adjusting back, similar to trying to copy what Katie did successfully, like yeah, I'm hopeful that maybe that could work, but then that means skipping the San Juans, and then what does that mean? Because if I'm in the U.S., then like I definitely like would love to go out to the San Juan. So yeah, it's hard, and I mean it's just life. Like you got to make choices, and I'm we are lucky enough to live in a time in the sport where maybe those sacrifices aren't needed fully quite yet, and I'm still fairly successful at racing, still getting away with doing a lot more of what I love, and I don't have to be pent up like a track athlete or a cyclist and professional. I mean, but then again, like you look at Ruth Croft and Tom Evans, the way they train for UTMB, like they're training like professionals, and you go like, well, does it take that to win UTMB now? And at least I would say I would argue that not necessarily because essentially. Learning to be outside and deal with the elements and stuff also has a lot of pros in our
Mm.
sport, and in a lot of ways you can embrace that side of it, kind of long days out in the mountains.
Let's talk about worlds for a second. I have a lot of questions here. I think the first one is just if you think about who was there and who wasn't, who was missing at worlds this year that you would have loved to have competed against and why?
I mean, it would have been like a as home course as it would get for Killian, so that'd be nice. Yeah, if Joe Plecker wanted to try that one, that one would be that would be the hardest, like one of the it would be the hardest race for like a track guy to go blind into. Like that wouldn't go well. Who else wasn't there? I mean, Francois wasn't there. Killian, Xavier, like these are guys that
Is
were at
Francois
the
still relevant at that type of distance? At that like relatively like a sub 10-hour
still
race?
it's 8 hours. But it gets to be technical and steep. Like none of it's like smooth running. He's good at running flowy technical. It would have been more interesting. I mean, so one of the cons of like a world championship is, I guess, two things. One, it competes with the other distances, and it because there's other guys on the U.S. team that were on the short course that would have been nice to race at that race CCC, things like that. I mean, not having UTMB 1 month earlier, like a couple extra weeks, and not having people that ran CCC a bit more tired, like having Francesco a little more healthy. I think he had a tweak in his hamstring or glute, and wasn't able to kind of prepare on the descents as much as he would have liked. So he felt he had a problem with the descending. Yeah, but at the same time, I think Louison and Benjamin, like on that technical and long of terrain, are about as good as it gets. So yeah, I think things it was interesting. Yeah, you get to line up and do it once, so it is what it is. I guess who do you think was missing? And yeah, so I guess real quick about the World Championships is it goes three deep for each country, and it's one of the negatives of something like a World Championships as opposed to a Diamond League or a UTMB or a Western States is limited in a lot of ways, but something where say 8 Kenyans, because they're the fastest marathoners, can all line up at the Berlin Marathon. You're not going to get that at the Olympics.
I think to answer some of your, I mean, I had some curiosities even on the women's side. I could, again, you would need to fact check me, but has Courtney Dauwalter ever participated on an American team at any of these world championships?
Yeah, she's done the 24-hour before.
The 24-hour, okay. But in the trail
Yeah.
context, I would have loved to have seen her on that team.
Yeah.
I have to imagine the opportunity was there.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have loved Ben Deeman. I like that one seemed like a no-brainer of like him knowing the terrain super good, but that had to do with he had twins born right around the same time, and basically UTMB worked out timing wise with due date, and Worlds did not. So life took priority there. So understandable. Tom made the choice to do
Oh,
UTMB,
yeah.
not Worlds. I took the choice to do Worlds, not UTMB. So yeah, top two guys at UTMB are quite good.
This is something we've talked about a ton on the podcast. We've also referenced this when it comes to like which races are the right qualifier, stuff like that. But how do you feel about like resumes versus competing your way into this race for team
I
selection,
think
team
with
building?
how our sport is at this time, I'm fine with resumes. I mean, at this point, like just this year, Katie and I both applied through resume, and then myself in 2019, the last time I did the team, I applied on resume, and I won the what's it now, the short course race. So I'm okay with it. I think yeah. So I'm okay with it. I think the qualifying races don't typically hold enough weight in them to necessarily warrant like attracting the best US runners. Like most of the best US runners will make more money, make more fame, make more future endorsements by doing other choices than the qualifying races, and that's truly where it gets undermined, is just that there's a bigger professional uh, schedule to do than Gorge Waterfalls this year. Or say, yeah, even the guys racing the short race stuff, would you rather take like the top American Taylor Stack from Golden Trail results, or would you rather make him race out in East Coast, what is it, New Hampshire,
Loon Mountain.
to to qualify for the team, or would you rather send him over to get more race experience racing technical stuff in Europe where I mean, Loon Mountain, I think like looks like a real deal race course. Actually, like it looks quite technical and chunky, but you're not racing too many. I think Remy LaRue comes down and races it because he's not too far away, but not too much international competition. Yeah, there's still just something about kind of getting your teeth sharp with international competition that I think, especially at the World Championships, if it's ran in Innsbruck, when it's ran in the Pyrenees, I guess the next one's in Cape Town, it's going to be really awkward for everybody because it's really travel for almost everyone. Maybe that will actually attract more federations from Africa, which could be really cool, or get other federations from Africa to send short course, long course teams, because notably, like Africa didn't, like Kenya, Uganda are the two that kind of show up. Ethiopia doesn't send anyone. Eritrea doesn't send anyone. You could kind of list all sorts of really strong running powerhouse countries that don't send teams in short course, long course. But it goes to, that's because short course and vertical, or sorry, classic and vertical fall under World Athletics historically, and those federations will only fund athletes to go to World Athletics, World Championships, and therefore they don't fund those athletes to do the other courses. So they don't do them at all. We don't even know really how much, if there is a subculture of like longer distance or longer trail stuff in Uganda, Kenya yet. I know I've seen Jacob Kiplimo run the Ugandan Trail National Championships. I don't know if you ever caught those results a couple years ago. but
Okay.
he ended up winning. I think it was only like a 45-minute race for everyone except Jacob, and he won in like 41 minutes. So he was 4 minutes faster than everyone. And then the way that they started this year, watching the Ugandan team was pretty like funny from their junior team up to their senior men and women. There's like about a mile start and finish of the race on roads. And they would get like a 30-second gap, and then all of a sudden, like they would kind of hold it through the trails, and then they get another 30 seconds on the road section. So they were just absolutely hammering road sections,
Okay. You're
which
kind
was
of
pretty
selling me on the
interesting.
resume. Would you go as far to say get rid of qualifiers and just go all based on resume for team selection?
Yeah, why not? So do that, and then all of a sudden, I mean, so like the long trail stuff, you also get 6 resume spots as opposed to 4. That's a bit more generous. So why not make 2 open? I mean, this year Adam and um from Alaska, I'm blanking on his name.
Oh, Trayson.
That took second. Trayson. Yeah, sorry, Trayson. Uh, they raced in. Yeah, we got 2 really good runners based off of the qualifying. But the rest of the team was off of resume, and I think so. Then heck, so we had Zach, me, Caleb, and who am I missing? Tyler Green. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Part of me during the race was even wondering if like the French team had kind of made the right call in making their runners not race UTMB weekend when I'm with 2 French guys, and I saw Vincent at the beginning of the race too, so I knew he wasn't too far back. So like, are they bringing in more freshness that's going to be a huge advantage? So not that you have to skip a race, blah 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 sort of thing, but if you're on the team, how much do you need to sacrifice to focus on that? And that becomes a bit interesting because how much is the World Trail Championships? Like, how much weight does it hold within our sport at the moment, and how much weight will it hold at the next championships and beyond? Like, it's hard to say. I would say Innsbruck and the Pyrenees have been the most interesting to me in that they like being European based seems like it's all the Europeans really buy into racing it, and it becomes a lot more competitive. Um, Cape Town's
This
pretty
whole
far,
thing,
and
this
I
whole this
know
whole,
Europeans don't like traveling.
all right. I texted Caleb before this and I said, "Hey, I'm talking with Jim today. What should I bring up with him?" And he said 2 things: the Black Shorts series, whatever that means, and six key
Okay.
prawn. Six key prawn. What is six key prawn?
Yeah. Six keep prend. I was supposed to send him home with that. Now I have 2 games of it. Yeah, actually, if you give me his address.
Go.
Uh, but so well, Siski Prawn's the easy one, so that's just a card game. In the US, you can buy this game. It's called Take Five, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I think I learned it with Francois and his family, and then play it with Simone and Laura. So mo most of us in a rush know how to play the game, and it's pretty fun. It's kind of a if you can play with like 6 people, it starts to get quite dynamic and fun. But I try really hard at this game. I lose really badly many times. Sometimes I do okay. But yeah, just a card game
Yeah.
with numbers and yeah. So
And it's
and
the
then
equivalent here is take five. The equivalent here is take five in the US.
yeah, you can find it in the US as take five. So
Okay.
six qui prend means 6 who takes. So a different way of saying the 6th person takes 5 cards is take 5 cards.
Gotcha. Okay. I'll check it out.
I think it's actually originally a German game. And then Black Short Series is kind of so I think Caleb was writing his article about kind of the landscape of trail running a bit, which I've been meaning to read because yeah, I don't know, but everything's kind of died down since the World Championships for me, and I've just kind of gotten put it on the back burner and haven't gone back. But it's relevant to this question, relevant to the answer of the Black Short series. But essentially, like, well, what could be the right solution to our landscape of say a Grand Slam, say a series? So a lot of when so Caleb came out to Arash for 10 days or something, maybe at least a week, maybe up to 2 weeks. came out to a rest. We got a bunch of nice training in together. As I was kind of recovering from OCC, and he was wanting to just have a place to train, but not go to the Pyrenees too early. So that was super awesome and really cool to have Caleb come out to a rush because we don't get too many Americans coming out. So always special. But yeah, I got to take him out on a lot of ridges and yeah, he just wanted to see peaks and ridges. So yeah, we hit a lot of the ones from what we can hit from the house without probably doing 30 plus miles. But if you did 30 plus miles, he would have gotten to see a lot more. But I don't think he got too much sunny weather. Um, but so Black Shorts series kind of became perhaps what you could call the ideal race circuit series to attract the best races and the best professionals. And essentially, um, your shorts kind of start, especially the color of your shorts, start designating whether like everyone mandatory has to wear black shorts. And then the brand and the coloring and the top, like you essentially can have teams, you can have brands, you can have brands that aren't within running sponsored teams. So how can you attract banks, businesses, financial firms, companies with money that have enough money to throw out a bunch for marketing? Like, let's stop dipping into just running's bucket, but like, let's look into the orange top, black shorts Home Depot team, let's say. Home Depot might have a bunch of money to put into marketing, but they don't know where to put it. Or say there's a Toyota team. Car manufacturers have tons and tons of uh, marketing money and they need a place to spend it. Or the Red Bull team, or blah, blah, blah. Just making these out, not trying to make any points about what
Sure.
brand should or shouldn't be in the sport, but essentially sometimes some of these companies are much bigger than just a say a shoe running brand, and I guess that would be the point. Or you're able to get a bigger team budget, or say you have a couple and you can put together whether it's a cycling jersey or an F1 package of brands to put together to run a team, and how you get them to do a league. And essentially the league then would guarantee X amount of dollars to do their series. So you have to have a retainer amount that's going to be enough of a salary that's lucrative and attractive enough to keep you in the league on its own. And say there's 3 races per year and you have to compete in 2 of them. So you always have everybody racing head to head at least once. Whereas like say Golden Trail, you have a lot of people right now not racing head to head all the time. And if they're not racing head to head, the race kind of becomes a dud and it's not so interesting. And then it went into kind of the race series of like what would be the most classic races that should be part of the schedule. And yeah, I think that even evolved into potentially a 2 year schedule, and actually each year alternates which races are on the schedule. So, like, say 1 year it has Western States as a 100-mile option, and then the next year it has UTMB as the option. And say, yeah, I think we all agreed like we're all shorter distance guys that thought Transvolcania would be a good one to throw on there. And when I told that to Francois, he said, well, if Transvolcania is on there, then Tor should be on there. So Tor 330. And then it's like, whoa. Of like, I'm not. But then for Francois, like his opinion and what his opinion of Ultra is, like, yeah, it's kind of, and maybe to say like how, say 200 milers are blowing up in the US and how longer races are blowing up in the US. Because if I see what was the most recent 200 miler? Yeah, you're in the 200 miler crew of all these things. Okay, so why wouldn't Tor be like this big, massive? So everybody thinks they're so badass for finishing Caledonia or finishing Moab or blah blah blah. But then, dude, everybody knows Tor is the most badass 200 miler you can possibly do. And if you haven't done Tor, you haven't really survived like the 200 miler. Like all the influencer guys need to know like Tor is the shit. You actually do it. And that actually qualifies you to go do Tour de Glacier, which you can't even enter unless you finish Tour. Like, so then it goes to like Tour is like it's funny because this existed before all of this, and like then get into guys of like probably most of these guys doing Cocodona or Moab or Tahoe or whatever, Arizona Monster or whatever. And then, so they've never heard of Franco Colli, the Italian guy that's on tour 4 times, who's just an absolute legend in Italy. Or if you go run the tour course, they just ask you, like, they'll just tell you the last time they saw Frankie running by because he's just doing laps out there. And they're like, well, that's cute. You're just gonna get your ass kicked by Frankie. And then if you tell them like you've won UTMB or you've ran UTMB, they go, oh, well, that's cute, but this is different. So we'll see how you do here. But thanks for coming out. Yeah. So I don't know. Nonetheless, Francois got whoa, whoa, whoa. So maybe Transvolcania at 48 miles doesn't make the list, but there's a lot like say it's Madeira Island. Trans Gran Canaria that are kind of in that 70 something mile range. But I don't know. I think the World Championships being in I mean, it ended up being 8.5 hour race, which was faster than what I thought. But I mean, it's a 50-mile race that took 8.5 hours, whereas you take away Lake Sonoma with 10,000 feet, which most Americans can like concept 50 miles, 10,000 feet. Like, it's pretty hard for the US or like pretty up and down, at least you could say especially because I don't think there's any climb over 2,000 feet consecutively there. But that took me less than 6 hours, I think, at that. So this one's like 2 hours, 40 minutes longer, probably maybe more, being like technically probably had a better performance at Worlds. So like it's pretty crazy that the same distance can take that much more time.
Just listening to you talk about this, I like, as a fan, as a spectator media, I love the idea of this, of every single possible trail discipline being packed into the season, and maybe even increasing the number of times you guys race, especially if it starts at like a 10K or a VK, and then you finish the season, you bookend it with Tour in
Yeah,
mid-September.
but do we really want to see like the ultra guys going head to head in a VK when in reality, like Remy Bonnet would beat us
Well,
all by 4 minutes? Like, it's or make us race a 10K on the track. Like, it's not necessarily no, it's not the spirit. So I think we should pick things that are representative of ultra trail, not trail, just ultra trail.
I think it comes down to how much you believe in talent translation. I think a lot of people think that if you're fast, you can move your way up, but I do think it can go the other way too. And I think you've proved it with, you know, the versatility with OCC and Worlds and what you
Well,
probably could have done
OCC
at
is kind of
UTMB.
funny because like in our world we look at OCC as the little kid short race of the UTMB series. Like, oh, well, that's the small one, so you can try that. It's over a 5 hour race. Like that's
Yeah.
the funniest part about like say like Golden Trail runners coming up to OCC. All of a sudden you go from running an hour and a half to maximum 2.5 hours. You throw them in a 5 hour race and it's just whoa, 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 whoa. Like this is hard. And not to mention like on the first climb, you take the best climbers in Golden Trail and you throw them in like well they're literally in OCC as well, but like they're running the same paces uphill too to start. So it's not necessarily like people, at least in shorter trail, are faster. But if you go, you bring in, let's say, bringing up Joe Clucker, but OAC or NAZ Elite, you talk to marathoners, track people, then they would just assume they would come in and, well, if the short trail guys, the Golden Trail runners are running that uphill, if I focused on it, I would obviously run further. But they're totally underappreciating that people come into trail running from so many other aspects, and like in ultra especially so many other attributes come through that are like super cool, that someone like Will Murray can come in and shine in our sport because it's endurance based. You don't need this like proper leg speed training of doing these artificially 200-meter repeats on a perfect
Yeah.
track that you're just not gonna get sustained on a trail. Like you need to deal with actually getting roughed up, with actually having bad footing, like never being able to push off how you want to push off, with rolling your ankle early in a race, for managing fueling. But that just comes into like more and more we're figuring out that, well, not we, but more people are figuring out that if you make a fuel plan, it goes a really long way in actually performing to your capability. But nonetheless, there are more variables and you can mess up, and it's hard to replicate good results one after another in the sport.
What are your three, like off the top of your head right now, when you were brainstorming with Caleb, what were your three races for this series?
Yeah, because it also kind of goes to what has the current stadiums that would also be attractive. So that plays a context because ideally, I think we all agreed we'd love to pick races for the aesthetics of just the course, just the environment of the people and like what it goes through. But I think the reality is like without a doubt, like you can't avoid kind of UTMB in Western States with how big of like a stage that they provide and the reality, like even me doing OCC this year, it kind of being a fun surprise to pull off winning it. UTMB has such a bigger stage, and like the biggest takeaway at OCC this year was just, man, I wish I was on the bigger stage at UTMB trying to do that again. Like that prize is worth so much that it's worth failing and not making it to the top of the podium at UTMB to have a chance at it. UTMB, like compared to Western States, is a lot bigger globally than Western States. I don't think you comprehend how much bigger until you see the differences and see how many people and stuff. Like, yeah. So, t- but at the same time, like the other idea of it is trying to balance out like racing globally. So I think finding a big race in China would be super important. I think the race that actually just happened the other weekend, let me look it up. I think it's near Shanghai. But it seems like most of the Chinese athletes go race there.
It's not Ultra Trail
Um,
Ninghai, is it?
yeah, Ninghai. Yeah,
Ninghai? Okay.
yeah. So talking with I think Duao Ji, who's a Hoka runner that finished I think fourth or fifth at UTMB this year. He had a huge breakthrough at UTMB, and that was super super cool to see because he's been trying to have a crack at it for a few years and is starting to make waves. But he's had tons of success on the Asian race circuit with 100 milers. But as he's come over to Europe, like several of the Chinese runners, they're it seems like they're a bit underperforming. Just similarly to sometimes say myself as an ignorant American coming over and feeling like I underperformed, it felt like they were walking away feeling like they didn't get what they came for. And I think more Chinese runners are coming over earlier. They're coming over with more food, more like figuring out where to buy rice, where to get other people to come in with food that they can eat because like they're going like days and weeks with like upset stomachs eating food in like the Western world or like sort of thing, whether they go to Western States or UTMB. So it's not a fair playing field for them to come to Europe and race. Or, I mean, yeah, think about some of the African marathoners, like the way they're able to make stuff happen across the globe, or potentially you could argue some of the troubles Kipchoge's had coming to race the world major marathons in the US compared to his success in Berlin, which is a similar time zone and stuff. There's just a lot more travel involved. Um, so I think alternate Western States UTMB years. I think I like the idea of Transvolcania. The spirit of the race and the island seemed to be great. Potentially Diagonal des Fous, I think, is the hardest 100 miler in the world. I think we all agreed like we'd love like Mount Fuji to be on there, but it just doesn't seem to have the consistency of being able to pull off like since it's a lot of the original races of the Ultra Trail World Series that broke off, and now some of them are part of the World Trail Marathons, and some of them are part of the UTMB series. If you go back and look at those original races, a lot of those are actually pretty awesome, and they had a lot correct at that time.
Okay. This is a hypothetical, and the options here span across sports, so keep that in mind. You can win one of these events that you haven't won yet. Sears and All, Grand Raid, Zagama, Pyramenta, any
Wait,
single stage.
Pyramenta Winter?
Yes. And then the last one, any single stage of the Tour de France. What are you picking and why?
Well, I think skiing would be the hardest for me. Pyramenta would be the hardest. Just I didn't grow up skiing. It's never, never, never gonna happen. Like I'm further away from winning Pyramenta than I am a stage of the Tour de France, legitimately.
Wow.
The technical side of it's insane. If you haven't, like, I grew up not seeing snow till I was about 16, so like just not happening. Yeah, a stage tour, Tour de France is pretty cool, and then to be able to still have a trail career. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. As far as running stuff, Sagama, Sierra now, or Diagonal des Fous. I mean, my career-wise, I'm going after Diagonal des Fous before going back for. Yeah, I'm not so interested in racing the shorter trail marathon stuff as much as I am with true ultra trail running. I'm interested in the ultra side of the sport and kind of have a bias towards that. Yeah, so I guess quick answer is I'll take a Tour de France stage. Yeah,
We've
sure,
been we've
easy.
been. I think it'd be cool. Which stage?
I guess winning an Alpe d'Huez stage. It doesn't get bigger than winning on Alpe d'Huez.
Um,
Alpe d'Huez finish and GC day.
yeah. So we've been talking a lot about how the sport could change or just like exciting new developments. And I'm thinking now about the PTRA, and I've always been curious, to what extent are you involved in the PTRA? What do you think it does well? Where do you see room for improvement? Like how influential can it be
Mm.
in bringing all this stuff into reality?
Yeah. So I'm not really involved. I'm a member. I think I pay the dues. I think there's dues every year. I don't know who they invite per se. Um, but I think I just got like included on emails from the beginning because of my like ITRA index. So that was that. But I would say they actually represent the runners the best with negotiating and talking to UTMB. And then specifically that goes through Julien Chaurier, who's now the lead role as far as accepting information, requests, complaints, anything coming from athletes or yeah, pretty much athletes will get funneled through him these days. That's his job with UTMB is to kind of streamline that and bring that towards the bigger company of UTMB to make things better on the athlete side of things. Yeah, I don't know tons and tons. It seems like a good initiative, and I'm kind of supportive of a representation from the runners from a total, but I would say I don't have a lot of involvement in many other facets of the sport besides racing.
Um, Earlier we were talking about just like places you've based out of to train and race, and this, I don't know how I didn't know about this earlier, but I didn't realize you were like curious about Vermont. How did you almost land in Vermont as your US stateside training base?
Wait, where did you hear that from?
Well, I heard it from Dan Kurtz.
Okay, yeah. So you have an absolute bias right there. Uh, no, I don't think
Oh, and
so.
Ian Boswell was talking about it too, I think. Like there was a couple of sources here.
So I think at first, like just firstly, I would say no, it's never been necessarily like followed much with like pursuing an actual training base. It is an interesting area, like it probably New Hampshire actually from like geographical standpoint in the White Mountains becomes a bit interesting actually, and then ironically enough, that's where like several ultra runners have kind of been birthed. But yeah, the White Mountains have like a base to summit quite high. They have really rugged weather. They have really technical trails, old trails, bit more of that humidity. But then the travel from the East Coast to Europe is so much easier than it is from the West Coast. The West Coast is like quite a bit harder to go two, three more time zones over to Europe, whereas
Yeah.
the West Coast will typically be 6 hour differences. Um, then Yeah, we ended up there mainly because of the Walmsley videos, getting to know Ansel Dickey, becoming friends with him, and then us moving back to the US last year when we were moving back at the end of November. We had stayed here for in France for 3 4 months, but we were on our way back to Flagstaff, and essentially the idea of stopping by to see Ansel in Vermont came up, and then I think Ansel's like, oh, well, that's when Ian's, I know Ian Boswell through Wahoo, and then following him through his own cycling career and being also a fan of him as an athlete. But he puts on a peach ham fondo pie, like fondo, which is just a fun, you do the route and it's not for race or speed, but you just do like, say, I think it's about a 50 or 60 mile route, and it's in leaf peeping season of the Northeast, and so basically the timing worked out to stop in, stay there for a week or 10 days. Met up with Eric LaPuma out there and stuff, so it was cool. We really enjoyed our time. Hadn't really spent tons of time out in that part of the East Coast, and it was very interesting learning experience about everything. Dan Kurtz took us on some of his local trails. I think don't know exactly what they were, but we probably got to look at Loon Mountain somewhere. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
some like ruggedness, like moisture on the roots and rocks. A lot of similarities to maybe racing in Europe. And then kind of looking at map stuff with the Long Trail and the White Mountains. It looks like an interesting option of why maybe Americans, yeah, why it wouldn't be a potential trail training hub for more Americans. I don't know. Probably because you would always have to travel everywhere. So you want to race in the West, then you always have to travel. If you want to race in Europe, you always have to travel. So it becomes kind of middle ground. But we ended up doing it just based off of taking a vacation. I wouldn't say we were considering it as a home base place.
Yeah, I think Dan was probably trying to mislead me so I could bring it up on the pod and
Yeah.
bring some attention to the
Yeah.
Northeast
We
Kingdom.
we really liked it. Yeah.
I mean, funny enough, I just pulled up Strava. The last activity that you have ever
Yeah.
uploaded to
Yeah. Yeah.
Strava publicly is the Peach and Fonda.
Yeah. On yes.
Okay, so I guess Francois has kind of been in your ear with Tor, but I also know that there is some antagonism between like the influencer side of the sport, which is currently taken over 200s, and like the actual pros. How much closer are you to believing in the legitimacy of races like Cocodona as a place to do competitive battle, to really like have a good athletes are
Uh,
there, good times are being run, all that kind of stuff?
Pretty far, I guess is the short answer. Uh, I don't think
It's
the
okay. You can
competitive
insult.
battle is
I'm a
there.
super fan. I'm a super fan, but you can insult him. Go ahead. Go.
Yeah. No, I don't think the competitive battle there. Is there intriguing stories in this and that? Sure. Yeah, like people are going through a lot and everybody's going through a lot in that, and it looks really tough. I think it's a different evolution of the sport that will take on different characteristics, and at what point, like as a sport, do we so I think supporting 200 milers and longer races. 200 miles is just also just a ridiculous American measurement. But just let the races be what they are. Let's have some long ones. Try to make it like someone never, ever, ever finish this under 50 hours or something, sure. Or like, I don't know, things should be maybe based on how much time they think it should take. But yeah, like you're skipping sleep, you're swelling up as you're doing it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Try to get caught in like some I guess Cocodona people got caught in some good weather this year with rain, but you also could have gotten lucky and skipped a lot of it. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. Does someone that wins Cocodona, do they have to prove themselves in a 100 miler to prove that they're a good ultra runner? Not necessarily, because essentially some of this, many of the attributes that are like enduring in a 200 miler is just still not getting shown in a 100 miler, and especially how 100 milers have evolved into a proper race. Like they're getting out competed in the 100 miler, and essentially like, well, grand old debate are would the 100 miler runners be the better 200 miler runners? There's going to be yes and no.
Mhm.
Some of them are going to have really good opportunities to continue being towards the best of the 200 miler, and then there'll be plenty of 100 miler people that wouldn't make the transition, and it kind of goes to passion. And as a whole sport, like um where do we want to put our priorities as far as like I think we need to kind of start defining the overall event sport of which events are kind of the top of our pyramid priority, and how we weigh the competitive aspect until things choose to be, or like things develop to be as competitive. Without a doubt, I mean, without a doubt right now I'd say it's not as competitive. But then like say perhaps there's a better argument that short trail is as competitive or more competitive as long ultra. But as a sport, I think we should try to give priority to the longer ultra in this aspect, because in my opinion, I don't want a marathoner to come over and have overnight success in our sport. I think if it's a good race, a good course, sort of things, like there should be enough that someone needs to commit to be a ultra trail specialist to win the event, more so than just avoiding racing other people that are doing similar things by just choosing a longer race in this case. Yeah.
Here is a major hypothetical. Next year, Hoka adds Cocodona as a tier 1 race to your bonus structure. They put a $100,000 bonus win on it, and you get the rollover. So there's a huge incentive to go do it. What time are you targeting on the course, assuming it's on your schedule? And the current course record
Uh,
is 58 low.
yeah. Yeah, it's still only 8 hours faster than Tor with how many thousand feet of up and down. I don't know. I would say I haven't seriously considered enough to give it an actual time thing. Do I think I'm better than 58 hours? Not necessarily. I think if I raced Cocodona, I think there's enough time for me to transition to May, but for the most part, it's a tight timeline. And yeah, you got to find, like at the end of the day, 100, $500,000 when you're broken and feel like shit, like trust me, it's not gonna like it just I don't care anymore. Money's not gonna motivate you to do things and to do things well that you're not already intrinsically motivated to do. So yeah, I think I'll just stick to my schedule. I feel like I've like branched out in my career too early many times, and like gotten whack-a-moled, and always learn things the hard way. But I'm not sure. I guess I want like to see my career out to trying to chase 200 milers too, just because it's another place I haven't tried to win yet. Like maybe I just don't go there and I don't have to chase this never-ending thing to try to prove anything. I'm just happy with competing where I'm at, and I can compete as long as I can at these races, and then that will be that. And eventually I won't be winning, and the world will keep going on.
Is there a difference? This is kind of philosophical. Is there a difference between, and this is in a race context, do you see a difference between getting the best out of yourself and getting the best out of the competition?
Yeah. Um, I think they are not like necessarily tied together. They can be exclusive events. Sometimes it takes getting the best out of someone else to get the best out of yourself, but not necessarily. Like I think you can find time trial experiences. Like yeah, I say during my 100 mile, or sorry, excuse me, 100K effort. Yeah, I've dug as deep as I've ever dug in myself, and I'm super happy with like I know my memories of that event in 2021 will be of like I dug so hard to try to get a certain time that I'm very satisfied with the 100K I did run. And then there's like the other page, like say, you want to go into 200 miles, you want to chase Sierras now, you want to chase blah, blah, blah. And then I go like, well, guess what? I've never done a race. Like I've never ran a road race in a Piba foam shoe. Like I haven't ran a half marathon. I haven't ran a marathon. I haven't ran a ultra in a Piba foam shoe, or sort of thing. So like that opens up a whole nother can of worms. And what do you want to, and it just kind of goes to there's too many things to chase. And yeah, I think I first saw the quote from Ellie Kipchoge, but essentially, like, don't chase two rabbits at once because essentially you won't catch either one. Sometimes it's best just to focus and stay a little bit in your lane as much as a rogue trail runner can do.
Have you ever, I guess as a follow-up to that, have you ever won Western States or UTMB without needing your absolute best on those given days?
Uh, yeah, what Western States.
What year?
Um, I would say 2021. I kind of walked away going like I didn't need to do Western States ever again, and that yeah, I ended up winning by an hour and a half. And yeah, there was more room for air, and like basically I got to Forest Hill at the fastest time ever, and um, there was a big gap, but I thought people were still close, but I was able to kind of just really manage it, and it was just there was I just had too much control and didn't feel like I was riding the line enough to make it as exciting as intriguing as I would have liked it to be. But then take it back in 2024, like was a great experience, and I loved racing it in with Rod, and my takeaway from that.
I guess, I mean, as a follow-up to that, do you think that there is, for people at your level of the sport who are competing for wins and podiums, do you feel strongly that for the entire field there is a like a quote unquote correct way to race, where it's like you're up, for example, you're up front trading blows the whole time, or
Yeah.
there's like the whole
So I
the
guess
fading thing going on?
it kind of goes into the context of even like that race, and then also 3 years later doing the race again and getting so much like such great experience out of Western States in 2024, where I'm like, oh yeah, I want to come back in 2025, and I was really motivated on that, and things can change like that. But a lot of it has to do with so much context of where you're at with training, where you're at with your fitness, where you're at with reality, with what your goals can be, what your goals are, how you do it, whether you get caught up in the race, whether you make mistakes, whether your crew shows up for an aid station or not, whether your drop bag makes it there. Like so many factors can change that aren't really relevant to performance and results or anything. Like someone way back can get way more out of them. I mean, everybody kind of knows that. Like someone in the middle or at the end of the race can definitely potentially get the most out of themselves out of the entire field in a race, but nobody knows about it. And I think, yeah, a lot of people that do ultra like realize I got so much out of myself, but only I and my family and friends kind of know about it. It's not this famous story of someone winning a race, but it takes a lot of context, I guess, to see how much like you get out of yourself.
Okay.
You hope that that ends in a result and a performance, but it's not necessarily tied to that at all, actually.
In the debate, or in the category debate around talent versus hard work, do you see yourself as someone who is coming to the table with talent, or as someone who's coming to the table with hard work? Like, which bucket do you see yourself more in?
Hard work.
Really?
Yeah.
And even though
And
you're undisputed, at least on the American side, the best in the sport.
yeah, in the fact that kind of that's the mindset I like had just ingrained in me with track and cross country through high school and college, and yeah, I've been around a lot of talented runners, and I don't necessarily think speed and talent are what necessarily persevere in ultra. Yeah, so I think I also am still learning and appreciating the skills that come through in ultra, and how much like that makes me truly love the difference of the sport that many people where I came from in the track world just don't understand, and there isn't a grasp. Like speed and time just translates to whatever distance you want it to be. And I think where maybe I get some of my most confidence of that I have like a talent and skill with it is sometimes kind of looking at how dominant Bruce Fordyce was, and to be able to get one of his records and what I would call like I would call my Carbon X shoe equivalent, or even yeah, maybe not equivalent. Maybe it's a little better than his shoe that he was running in the 80s, but like I wouldn't call the Carbon X ones like a very good representation of what Hoka is capable of doing and the technology at the time and just being a carbon shoe. I thought it was a bit stiff and quite hard on my muscles and stuff to run that far on road. But kind of how dominant he was, bit like he was, and to be able to compete with someone's history that way is interesting. But then, like now with technology, I don't know what any times mean if you measure by time, and that goes more and more and more to trying to create some sort of black short series that prioritizes winning, prioritizes racing, prioritizes the story behind the addition of the race more than anything, and absolutely throwing out your Cocodona race course record because it will never be run on that course ever again because it's 200 and something miles with all sorts of permits that are not going to be strung in. It's, just stop comparing the times, or like what's really cool too is actually the more you dig into potentially Tom Evans' run at UTMB, probably the more like it's close or better than my run at UTMB, and you could get into super fine details of like actually how close it is, but at the end of the day, like I think it should be appreciated that Tom Evans is the current UTMB champion, that Vincent Bouillard has won UTMB, that I won UTMB 2023, and like we can be proud of being a UTMB champion alone. Like you don't need to say like they have the course record that it's the best ever. Like Caleb Olson is the Western States champion, and like we should be appreciating him for being the current M1 of the US. And like that's our guy of he won the biggest ultra in the US. And it's his year to kind of be the US's M1. I think that's pretty cool.
So I'm gonna make a statement and let me know if I'm on track, if you agree or disagree. We have a preoccupation in the sport with times over racing, and that should be reversed. We like, especially the media should be focusing more on just actual racing, that analysis, that
Yeah,
appreciation. Because
and
okay,
that even brings together even more of the story of like the captivating parts of say a backyard ultra, of a 200 mile ultra, because okay, relative speaking, maybe 200 miles they're moving a bit slower, say 50 miles they're moving a bit faster, but it doesn't really matter. Like if it comes down to like ultimately we want to see people try their hardest and to get the most out of themselves, and watching people do that through sport and the common sport of ultra trail, like this is what we want to push forward. And if that's coming out, then it should be represented at the table of ultra trail running, and there shouldn't be a shun associated with it as long as we feel like it's a captivating race that people are getting the most out of themselves. There's still a spot for it. I think there's no limit on, so far, there's no like definition of what an ultra is. So yeah, it should all be really interesting. If someone wants to put that effort towards going for the 6 day world record, like that could be the potentially most captivating event we watch in our lifetimes in the sport. If the right person puts in the right effort and like you break down what they just did, it would be insane. Like, yeah, to see that in real time would be nuts. But how many of us have followed a 6 day race? Like, it's one of the oldest events of the ultra sport, and probably not many of us have tracked it too much, or been really captivated by it. But why not? We're seeing like the long format stuff. Like we love following, we love dot following, and it's an addictive like way to follow a race of not watching every verbatim minute and second. Like some people want to do that, but at the same time, like just following a dot and when's the next update, and oh, I have time to go do this before they get there, and then what? Are they still doing okay? Like it's really a fun way to spectate.
okay, a couple training questions for you. Broadly speaking, how would you assess the professionalism of training in our sport versus other endurance sports like cycling, triathlon, marathon?
Okay, so marathon's too short. Triathlon, Olympic triathlon's too short. Ironman's interesting because it's 7 to 10 hours. So you're getting ultra time there. Cycling in the World Tour level, I think, is the pretty much the most cutting edge. Potentially track is cutting edge as far as, well, also pushing the boundaries, but at the same time, they set a lot of training principles. But then, like as Americans, we probably underutilize Nordic skiing, swimming, like these other sports that are super endurance based. Like ultra needs to identify as an endurance based thing of like potentially. Here, I'll get off topic on something else a little bit because it came up in free trail of me
Please.
saying it shouldn't be an Olympic sport, and then week later you see Golden Trail pushing Golden Trail stuff being an Olympic sport, blah blah. But like um, to me, an hour, 2 hours, even trail racing just doesn't differentiate enough. When you get to be 5+ hours, it starts to be a different sport, and that you're truly like flirting more in like different zones of training that aren't just purely threshold based or power based. It gets to be more relatable to endurance swimming, endurance cycling, ski stuff. So you got to be a lot more, there's more strength involved, but then still when you're doing 5 to 15 hours, it's still like up tempo fast, you can feel for it. But then say as you get to 20 to 30 hours, I would say you start struggling more with like this idea of 24 hours and going through a night, and like it gets really, really interesting. Like should 24 hours be our ideal goal? Maybe, because 24 hours like is one of the most historic kind of measures of time that we have, going thousands of years back, of just when the sun gets right back to this spot tomorrow, like the race stops, who went the furthest, like that's kind of interesting. Like don't make a course with yeah, don't make a course with a watch, just make a course with like who goes the furthest. That's a different format that I don't know of as like at least a famous race that does that. But we need to differentiate our sport as like different qualities need to come through, and that like it shouldn't just be speed-based things, because then I think you will get the same athletes and blah blah blah. But we know in ultra that different athletes actually do end up winning if you keep going a little further. It's pretty interesting. And then I also always like how, like, say, the beginning of a race, sometimes I go, oh, well, we'll see how everybody finishes because we've already broken up at mile 10 and this is the order of guys it's in, and we'll see how it does. So, like, you break the pool table and, like, where does everything go? And more times than not, some, like, say, top five will finish in top five and no one changes and it is what it is. But part of me has grown to really appreciate just well, if you don't run the next 80, 90 miles, then it's not an ultra. So, like, if you don't want to run the next 80 miles, then you better tap out now, because, like, this is our sport. And, like the people that are going to go the next 80 miles are ultra runners. And the people that want to call it quits after 10, 20 miles and say, this is the fastest people, like, that's it, then, that's not the same sport. And you got to be good at the 100-mile distance of it. I always kind of smile at that point of a race. If like you look at who's up there and like, oh, these are fast, strong guys, but then we're like, well, we'll see who's ultra runners and who's not by the end of it. That's always pretty interesting.
As you, because obviously you're self-coached, as you try to get better as an athlete, evolve as an athlete, is there not enough innovation happening in trail for you to pull inspiration there? Are you pulling a lot of your ideas, your big ideas, your new ideas from the cycling world, try,
I don't
etc.?
see innovative ideas coming from trail. I mean, it's hardly coming, it technically not coming from track probably, because that's coming from like a lot of stuff catching so much attention is Jakob Ingebrigtsen putting out so much recently and becoming so successful and dominant on the track, that's like caught so much attention. And I would say that's kind of the beginning of double threshold becoming absolutely like overwhelmingly popular amongst track runners. But all the Norwegian method is based in Nordic skiing to begin with. Culturally, like that's what they're behind. And that's a much, much bigger endurance sport. You'll see more similarities with cycling. I think cycling's pretty cutting edge, but it's pretty secretive within teams, which also kind of, I think, in the past has created some of the toxic environment to have the cheating issues. I think, yeah. But yeah, I don't see trail. I guess at the end of the day, I don't see trail running being too innovative. Perhaps you could say what was Steve Johnson, the coach of Tom and Ruth,
Evoke endurance. Yeah.
coming out with like the muscular. I don't know. I've never done that,
You gonna use a weighted
but
vest anytime soon?
I've never used a weighted vest. Sometimes I'll have an extra bottle in my pack because I'm going a little further. But yeah, I'd rather do another cold than repeat hills with a weighted vest for no significant purpose other than training. I think it's better to make a better route. I think that's one thing I love about Ardèche in France is the routes that I can do for training are just super aesthetic. It's always a loop. Yeah, like in Flagstaff, I'm repeating climbs like most of the US. Like you have a good climb you have and you repeat. Yeah. It's training. You can get fit. You can do everything you need to do to prepare properly. But at the end of the day, sometimes just massaging the head to have a nice route and look back on it on a map is pretty cool and rewarding in a different way that adds layers to enjoying the process and enjoying the sport and just enjoying doing what you're doing. Yeah, I like doing it as a route and not necessarily just repeating climbs with a weighted vest
Maybe two
or
more for
a
you.
ski lift.
Especially as you age into your career, how do you feel about pushing year-round relative high volume versus having a true off season where you're cross training or
Yeah.
engaged in a totally different sport?
Um, I'm definitely leaning more into the off-season part of it and just the fact that like it's made it a lot harder to peak when I want to peak if I'm just pushing the schedule all the time. I'm in a debate with Francois whether it's possible or smart to open my season in March. But for me, I'm like, well, if I don't open in March, then when am I going to open? And I don't know if I want to wait that long. And because there's quite a bit of snow in Aresh usually, or hopefully. So if it's a good winter, then it'll be a later start to the year. But I don't know. Part of me is wanting to grind a little bit through January, February to get a race in. But right now, I'm totally off. Like, so after Worlds, I decided to get a PRP injection, which totally reset everything, which it's still October. Like, time's ticking by slow. And I'm starting to jog a little bit again, but actually, mostly I'm just walking to and from French class here in Nice. And I still got to
Wow.
wait longer to kind of get after any sort of proper training. It's not, yeah, I'm off season and not but yeah, many people can beat me in all sorts of races at the moment.
Wait, say more about these French classes. What's going on there?
So currently, Jessa and I are in Nice, France. There's nicer weather here in November, usually, even though today was rainy and cloudy and not so nice, but still 60s. Whereas Ardèche Beaufort has snow and gloomy and no races on the calendar really, except for Saint-Élion. Have you ever heard of that race?
Ben Demon did
Saint-Élion.
it. Yeah, of course. Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah. Didn't win it.
I know.
He's got to go back.
That's a
Um,
brutal race.
yeah, I think Thomas Cardant won last year. He was on a rip of 50 milers at the end of last year.
Amazing.
Uh, but yeah, it's kind of this horrible night race that just is notoriously always ran in sleet, snow. 50-mile flat, fast race. That's also Europeans just your stereotypical strong Europeans are just like, no way I'm doing that. So you get kind of different um, type of European ultra guys that do that race and probably would transition really well to US ultra stuff that tends to be a bit more what we would call like flatter running sort of stuff. But so nothing to train for. That was the point at this point, more or less in Europe. So in Europe, things really shut down because they're like essentially the whole continent's a lot further north than I think what a lot of us realize, and it's just winter hits most places, and it's not as fun to train. So less race opportunities locally. Um, so most people try to change sports, whether it's two roads and you're kind of stuck in a city, or you're in the mountains and you switch to skis. Most the famous ultra trail guys would probably switch to skis, but there's actually other guys like definitely hammering more like road stuff or jumping into cross country season. Katie Shides jumped into a cross country season before of like that's where you can find some fun, something different to do and kind of consider that a change of sports for the winter. But so I'm not doing anything at the moment in
Okay.
October. It's probably as far as away from a race and fitness I can be at the moment, and trying to come back in a smart, slow, healthy way to be as healthy as possible next year and try to prevent my knee from flaring up from races, because I would say this year I've had some successful races, but I'm not really happy with how my knee's reacting from the races. Like Chianti, I wasn't able to roll Chianti into racing Western States. It kind of unraveled and I had to reset April, May, and that was really disappointing not to kind of do the schedule that I had on paper at the beginning of the year. So October is more just a preventative try to come back healthier, but at the same time, like I'm trying to do things and just like sometimes I think a lot of people get this, but you back way off on training and you just still have achy stuff, and it's actually not till you get up to a certain amount of volume where like things start to calm down and find more balance. So hopefully it's theoretical to come back more healthy. We'll see
Okay.
what pops up and what I can actually get rid of. But the idea is looking after the knee for that not to flare up the way it's flared up the last year or so. Because it's just been kind of a continuous little bit of a nagging injury that requires a bit of a reset when it does unravel completely. But I've been able to train really well on it within training context, and it's kind of those long ultra race days that it's broken it down a little more than I wanted, because I actually wanted to roll the World Championships into one more race this year, ideally at Diagonal des Fous, but more or less after 5, 6 days, it was not confident enough to be able to say like let's just go forward without creating more problems. So brakes got pushed, and then I think Jess brought up going to Les Templiers, and then all of a sudden it was like, well, could I switch to Les Templiers? But for me personally, I felt like Les Templiers actually would be more risky than Diagonal des Fous, just because it was more of a full open stride, which tends to aggravate it more than kind of a grindier run hike race that Diagonal des Fous would be. But more or less it turned down to also like travel and whatnot wasn't going to work to fit in that. So concurrently, while doing reset, I'm trying to learn French and get better at French, and taking Alliance Française here, and it's just more eye-opening of how much further I have to go to actually get to a level of French that I'd be happier with and more fluent.
Well, you must have as good a sense as ever after 10 to 12 years in the sport of even coming off an injury, the approach that's going to get you to the start line, like as fresh and ready to compete. Like it's not just a matter of like feeling this pressure to.
But I think you'd think that, but I mean, it kind of even goes to just like maybe people think I have this and that figured out, but more times than not, like most of the time, I'm probably just as much scattered as anyone else would be at it, and it's just trying to pull it all together by the time you got to step up on stage and do a race, and everybody thinks it was all great, and man, he just knows how to do it, but at the same time, you're like, whoa, somehow we pulled off another one. Sometimes it feels like that. I guess it's like when you're actually behind the scenes, you're like, wow, this is a mess. But then when you see what the end product of what was produced, you're like, whoa, that was so good. But then people behind it are like, I don't know, it doesn't feel clean, and it could have been better here, here, and here. And I'd say it's a feeling more like that rather than feeling confident about knowing exactly what I'm doing and how to do it perfectly. And I foresee making plenty more mistakes in the future still.
Here's the last question, I promise. Do you get the sense that Like, is it any harder for you in 2025 to win a race than it was in 21? Like, do you actually feel in the depth of the field, do you feel the sense that this sport is getting more competitive, that it's harder to win, or has it kind of felt the same since you've been in the sport since 2015, 16?
I think it takes a better version of myself. No, I think just the difference is like I think undoubtedly the sport's gotten more competitive and more depth. Depth for sure. But fortunately for me, like kind of my confidence and what I expect and how to execute has grown similarly. So I've been able to kind of stay on in front or on top of the wave a bit. So it seems like maybe I'm ahead, but really I'm just getting dragged along with everyone else at the same time. I think that's a good way to look at it rather than me being ahead. I think I'm riding the same wave everybody's on, and I've been lucky enough to balance a little bit longer.
Jim, thanks so much for the time. Thanks for going nearly 2 hours with us. We really appreciate it.
Fun talking with you.